Okay, the next book that I read was called The Churchill Sisters. So it's basically about Winston Churchill's daughters, and their involvement in like World War II and aviation. So I got this book like 3 years ago, maybe, at the Air and Space or the Air Museum in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I think we went in like February or March. And then the bookstore, they had like different books that were about like aviation. So I bought a like a rom-com book called The Layover, and I read that one right away. I read that one in the summer actually of that year, and it was phenomenal, by Lacey Waldron. Like, check it out. It learns so much about flight attendants because there's a character about a flight attendant, and the author in real life is a flight attendant. So she's written a few books that are inspired by her journeys as a flight attendant, and so she like made this rom-com book, and it's phenomenal. So it's called, I think it's called The Layover. Really good book. But I picked up The Layover, and then I picked up this one because I thought it was like a really cool like, historical one. And I had no idea that Winston Churchill had daughters who were, involved in aviation in World War II, and the women's, like the women's work field during that time while all the soldiers are off at war. Because you learn, Winston Churchill was British, but in the U.S., you learn about how the women took over when the men were all drafted. The women were in the factories and things like that. But I had no idea that he was like close with his kids. It was really interesting read, specifically with his daughters, and like the way that him and his wife kind of were together and raised their kids. And so I just kind of felt all about that. And like, he was definitely way more affectionate than his wife was. And so, just, I don't know, just the impact and the way specifically his daughters, because I think with his son, the relationship was a little bit different. You didn't get like all of it in this book, but you got mostly the daughters who did make an impact in, the women's work field and specifically aviation. And just the way, I don't know, I just was really in awe on the way that he was a father. And I know he's a very like polarizing figure, but I don't know, I was just really intrigued by the family aspect that was written in the book. And to like learn more about him, because or at least for us in the US, we didn't, when it comes to like world history or like US history, you kind of only get a little bit glimpse, particularly what your country is involved with. So sometimes you don't get the whole picture of a war or a relationship with another country. But I really liked how it was like it was like a learning historical novel. And sometimes the ones are really exciting because you're just like, oh my gosh, I did not know this. But then it kind of like helps you understand what was going on in that country at that particular time and how maybe it relates to the country that you're in at that particular time, even though you weren't there. But it's kind of help understanding the relationships of everything. So I would say if you're like really into like history, or maybe just into like how, I don't know, women in general were like back then in terms of the workforce and how they got like their rights or whatever, I would definitely like pick up this book if you are interested in like learning about history or just, I don't know, learning more in general. Like it's a really good book. I don't know, I really like it, and I think I'll probably read more. I feel like World War II is an interesting one. So if you want to read and learn more about it, check out this book, The Churchill Sisters.